Welcome back, troops. Let's tab 59. What a cracking day. So, medals, medals, medals. Now, I'm no expert on medals, but it's a nice, interesting chat, I think. And it may be of interest to people that don't quite understand the basics of our medals in the military and in the civilian world to a degree, over here in the United Kingdom and Great Britain. Because it's quite a complicated and ancient old system, some of it. And I'm no expert, as I said, so I'm just going to try and touch on it a little bit for you. So you basically break down Great Britain's medals into sort of three categories, or about three basic categories. It's very, very complicated, so bear with me. So, first of all, at the top of the list, if you like, we've got an honours system over here, where you can get an honour. And then we've got decorations, which are medals awarded for conspicuous gallantry and bravery, valour, etc. And they're all broken down into different levels as well. And then, of course, after that, you've got awards. Now, awards really are sort of campaign medals for various conflicts and operations, and long service, good conduct medals, meritorious service medals, and some of the UN and NATO and EU medals, and we'll get into those a bit later. So let's start off with the honours system. Now, it's really quite complicated. And I'm talking about knighthoods, when someone becomes a knight or a damehood for females. And they get called Sir Tom Jones or Dame Helen Mirren. They get that title once they've been knighted. And after that, you've got the Orders of the British Empire. And there's several categories of that. You've got Commander of the Order of the British Empire, and you've got the Officer, the OBE, and you've got the MBE, the Member of the Order of the British Empire. And then right at the bottom, you've got the BEM, the British Empire Medal. Now, these honours, all of these honours, these ones, can be awarded to both military personnel and civilians. The medal is exactly the same. It doesn't look any different whether it goes to a military person or to a civilian, but the ribbon does. Now, with the CBE, that's the Commander of the Order of the British Empire, and the OBE, the MBE, and the BEM, those medals all have a crimson ribbon. And the edges of the crimson ribbon have got like a pearl grey pinstripe running down them. If it's awarded, however, to someone that's in the military, then the ribbon has another pearl grey pinstripe running down the centre of the ribbon. So if you see somebody wearing an OBE or an MBE or CBE, any of those Orders of the British Empire medals, if they've got a little thin grey stripe down the centre of that ribbon, that tells you they were awarded that whilst they were serving in the military. So that's one way of telling whether the person was military or civilian when they got the award. And of course, with those ones, you get the post numerals. So in other words, if you get an OBE, obviously, it'll say the person's name, and afterwards they can put OBE or MBE or BEM, whichever they want. So the honour system's quite complicated, and there's all sorts of different orders. Orders of the Bath, Orders of the Thistle, all these different ancient awards, some go right back in time. So it can get quite complicated what people have got. But the common ones, certainly in the military, more common ones are the CBE, the Commander of the Order of the British Empire, the OBE, the Officer of the Order of the British Empire, the MBE, the Member of the Order of the British Empire, and like I say, the last one, the BEM. So that's sort of touches on our honours system. After those medals, the next category I want to talk about is decorations. This is where you get an award, you're decorated for an act of bravery or gallantry. And of course, the most famous one here in the United Kingdom would be the Victoria Cross, the highest military award. However, you've also got the George Cross, which is equal in stature to the Victoria Cross. So, and the George Cross can be awarded to both military and civil personnel, whereas the Victoria Cross is for military only. So the George Cross and the Victoria Cross, they're the top ones in our country, in the United Kingdom. They are right up there. You've got one of those bad boys, you've done something pretty special. They don't just give them out. So the George Cross, as I say, could be given to both civilian and military. And that might sound a bit strange. And I know there's been instances where in combat, in war, I believe I'm right in saying, it's off the top of my head, remember, I don't script this, that a soldier won a George Cross in Iraq. Now, the reason he didn't get a Victoria Cross for his action was because it was a friendly fire incident. I believe there was an airstrike on a light armoured reconnaissance unit, Scimitar, something like that, and one of the vehicles was struck, I believe by an A-10 or something, and the soldier concerned went into the burning vehicle that was hit and recovered a colleague or two. I can't remember exactly. I can't even remember his name, to be honest. Apologies for that. But he did this act, this massive act of bravery, valour, but it wasn't under enemy fire because it was a friendly fire incident, and so they wouldn't award him the Victoria Cross because it wasn't in the face of the enemy. It was a friendly fire incident, but it was an equal amount of bravery, say, to a Victoria Cross. There was a real danger of him dying in that act of bravery. So he got the George Cross. There's one example. Of course, police officers and even civilians, you know, if there's a terrorist attack or something, or a fire or some disaster, natural disaster maybe, doesn't have to be through terrorism, and a member of the public or police officer or fireman, whatever, goes in and risks their life above and beyond, then they can get awarded the George Cross. So those two are highest level 1 decorations, George Cross and the Victoria Cross. I think the George Cross was instigated in about 1940, so just after the start of the Second World War, and there's only been just over 400 awarded. So it's really, really difficult award to receive. You know, you've got to do something very special to get it. There's lots of other decorations for gallantry and bravery and valour. Well, valour really is the only one that I think gets mentioned with valour is the VC, but there's other medals. There's the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross. That's a fairly new one. That came out in the 90s, I believe. Then, of course, there's the Military Cross. It's an old established award for bravery. At one time, the Military Cross was only awarded to officers in the British Army, or the British Armed Forces rather, the Military Cross. And anyone below officer rank would receive the MM, the Military Medal. So 2 different awards for the same sort of action. But again, I believe it was in the 90s, at some stage in the 1990s, they decided that any rank could receive the Military Cross, and that's happened on a few occasions. Then you've got the Queen's Gallantry Medal. I'm not putting these in the right order, but there's so many, you can Google them, there's so many different bravery awards. And again, with these bravery awards, you can have the post numerals behind your name. Johnson Bahari, VC, for instance. Victoria Cross. So if you've won one of those awards, the Military Cross, another one, put the MC behind your name as well. So that's just touching on some of the bravery awards, if you like, for gallantry, etc. And then you've got sort of standard awards, if you like, medals, and these cover, this category covers campaigns, military campaigns. Normally each campaign you go to as a soldier, an operation, you receive, if you're in theatre on that operation for a certain amount of days, it depends on the operation, you get awarded a medal for that campaign. A good example could be the Iraq medal for the last Iraq war, or Gulf War I medal, if you like, the Gulf medal. You get that for being on that operation. Now, going back slightly, very quickly, going back to bravery decoration, I did miss one or two out, But one I did want to mention was MID, mentioned in dispatches. Now, there's other ones. There's King or Queen's commendation for bravery or for valuable service. And these are like small oak leaves or laurel leaves. Mentioned in dispatches, MID is a little oak leaf. So it's not a medal in its own right. But what happens is if you're on, let's say you're in Afghanistan when the war was on out there, you do something particularly of note, but it's not enough to get a medal in its own right, you can get mentioned in a dispatch. Private Smith, his actions on the day, and he can get mentioned in the dispatch. So to denote that, it doesn't get a medal, he gets a small oak leaf, and that oak leaf goes on the ribbon, it's pinned to the ribbon of the medal. So it denotes that he or she has been mentioned in dispatches. So going back to normal campaign medals. So we've got our campaign medals. Now we have a general service medal in this country. And when we were involved in Operation Banner in Northern Ireland, everybody that served over there in Northern Ireland on Operation Banner got the GSM 1962 with clasp Northern Ireland. So the General Service Medal, there's a new one out now, there's one with a king on it. There's a new King's General Service Medal, they've changed it. But basically, it's where you get a General Service Medal, a campaign medal. It's exactly the same medal and ribbon, but you always get it with a clasp, and the clasp will have written on it the area of operations that medal was awarded for, or the clasp was awarded for. So for instance, back in my day, you'd often see people with the campaign service medal, the General Service Medal, with the clasp, and on the clasp would be written, little silver clasp, Northern Ireland. But then somebody may have served previous to that in, say, Dhofar out in the Oman, and they'd have Dhofar written on it, or it could have been Aden or Borneo, all these different clasps. And it's the same with the new General Service Medal. You get the medal, it's never awarded without a clasp, you get the medal and it'll have a clasp. If you go on a similar operation to a different area, you get another clasp with another area written on it. But also on top of that, you do get, like I say, the Iraq Medal, the Iraq War Medal, the Falklands or the South Atlantic Medal. It's called the South Atlantic Medal for the Falklands War, and so on. So that's our campaign medals. Now, interestingly, for the British forces, when we go on UN or NATO operations, we're allowed to wear, as most other countries are, that NATO or UN or even an EU medal for that operation. But what's different with the British, certainly, I'm not sure about other countries, but certainly with the British, we don't then produce our own medal with our monarch on it, like a campaign medal. Example is, if you went to Bosnia, whether it was on the UN tours, the UNPROFOR tours, or whether you went on the NATO tours, you got the NATO or the UN, or both if you served out there more than once. You get the UN or the NATO medal issued by those, and you're allowed to wear them. But there isn't a British award that goes with it. So you won't get like a medal from, back then, the Queen Elizabeth, with a Bosnia medal, and then you got your UN Bosnia medal. You only got the one medal from the UN or from NATO. Now, I believe in the United States that might be slightly different, in that the United States give you a campaign medal for that area, and you may get the NATO medal and wear them both. It happened in Afghanistan. Afghanistan was a NATO-led operation, as you know, and there was a NATO medal, an ISAF medal, issued by NATO. British soldiers, I believe, received it but couldn't wear it because there was an operational service medal for Afghanistan. So you couldn't wear two medals for the same campaign, if you get me. However, there was one slight exception to that, because the first time the United Nations went into a campaign, into an operation, was the Korean War in the 50s. And at the end of that campaign, British service personnel received a medal with Queen Elizabeth on the front. It was a Korea medal. And also there was a United Nations medal issued as well, with a bar saying Korea. And Korean veterans wear both those medals. So there's an example where it did happen, where there was two medals issued for the one campaign, and you were allowed to wear the UN, which is basically a foreign award in a way, and the one from the Queen. But after that, it never happened. NATO medals and UN medals and EU medals, certainly for Bosnia and that, were awarded, and you got nothing from your own country, from the Great Britain. Now, another thing in this country, in the United Kingdom, we don't have a wound medal. We don't have a specific medal, we don't have any medal for being wounded on operations. Unlike the United States of America, who can receive, or who receive, the Purple Heart. So I think some other countries have wound medals. I'm not too sure. Obviously the famous one, like I say, is the Purple Heart, very well known medal. Here in Britain, we don't get that. But Queen Elizabeth, when she was on the throne, and I can't remember the date of this, she instigated or whatever, or produced the Elizabeth Cross, which is a cross medal, Elizabeth, and that's awarded to the next of kin of a service personnel that's died on operations. So the soldier, sailor or airman never gets that medal, it's awarded to the next of kin. And so often you'll see a widow, maybe, or a widower, or a parent wearing Elizabeth Cross, especially around Remembrance time, when you see the service of Festival of Remembrance at the Albert Hall, Royal Albert Hall. You often see the war widows wearing their Elizabeth Cross. They may have their son or husband's medals on the other side, and on this side they have the Elizabeth Cross. So that's the nearest thing the UK's got to a wound medal. Now, other awards outside of campaign medals, of course, we have long service good conduct medals, which are awarded obviously for long service and good conduct. We also have meritorious service medals. We have one meritorious service medal, very, very hard to get, a great medal. Not many are given out each year. You're right.
You're being nosy.
Just having doing my video, look. I'm walking across these gentlemen's land.
Yeah,
well, I'm sticking to the path.
See, yeah, I see you walk down there. I just wonder what you're
What's he doing? He's got a gun in his hand.
Not this time.
You're online now.
Well, then you got something in your hand.
Yeah, what's he metal detecting? See you later. See you later. All right, you go.
Camera,
Yeah, you'll be on YouTube later. So that's a local farmer that I know. He obviously spotted me walking through his field and wanted to know what I was up to. Where was I? Long service, meritorious service medals. So there is a meritorious service medal, but that's quite a hard one to get. What else have we got? Well, that's pretty much it. Long service, good conduct. We have an accumulative campaign service medal. So if you've been on certain operations and you accumulate so many months on operations, you get this medal, an accumulative campaign service medal. There's two versions. They brought a new one out in 2011. I'm not sure off the top of my head the criteria for it, but there is two of those as well. Now the other one, now let's get on to commemorative medals. So outside of all those ones I spoke about, campaign medals, awards, decorations, honours, we have a certain amount now and again of commemorative medals. Now, commemorative medals, in our case here in Great Britain, are when the monarch has a coronation or a jubilee. And a great example of that was Queen Elizabeth II. She was coronated in the 50s. A coronation medal was issued to certain people, not just the military. These commemorative medals, coronation and jubilee medals, are also awarded to certain members in civilian society, but also members of, say, the emergency services, prison officers, police, fire brigade, etc. But the military get a chunk of them as well. Now, the coronation medal for Queen Elizabeth, there wasn't many of those given out, and her first jubilee was in 1977, a silver jubilee, when there was a silver jubilee medal given out. But only a small number awarded, and you're very lucky to have got one. Her next, Queen Elizabeth, her next jubilee was in 2002 for her golden jubilee, 50 years. And a few more were given out. And the criteria for that jubilee medal, the golden jubilee, and the next one after that, which was diamond jubilee in 2012, and then the platinum jubilee in 2022, those medals were given out a little bit more freely. And how they were awarded were, if you was in the service, services, on the day of her Jubilee, and you'd been serving for a minimum of 5 years on the date of her Jubilee celebration, then you received that Jubilee medal, so it's gold, diamond, platinum. That was her last Jubilee, the Platinum Jubilee. So those medals were issued. They're commemorative medals, however you can wear them with, it's from the monarch obviously, so you can wear those amongst your other campaign medals, whatever you've got. Differences with the Jubilee medals and the coronation medals is they're not named. Now, this might be strange to some of you people outside the United Kingdom, certainly maybe over in the United States, you might not know this. All the medals that are issued to British service personnel, on the edge of the coin of the medal, going round the rim, is your name, rank number, and your unit. If you're in the artillery, at the end it will say RA for artillery, or if you're in the Royal Logistics Corps, it'll say RLC. If you're in the infantry, it'll have the initials of your regiment. So for instance, in my case, Princess of Wales Regiment, it will say PWRR afterwards. So have your number, rank, and your name, and the unit or corps that you were serving in at the time of getting a medal. But Jubilee medals and coronation medals, they don't come named. They have nothing round the outside of the coin, the medal if you like. So that's one difference with those. And of course, with UN and NATO and EU medals that are issued, they're very thin actually, those medals. If any of you've got one, I'm sure you have. There's no room to engrave your name around the edge of the coin. I believe in the United States, you can have your name and details put on the back of the medal. I think there's space for that. I don't know if they come engraved or not, or whether you have to do it. But over here in the UK, all our medals, apart from Jubilee, all British medals, apart from the Jubilee ones and coronation ones, have your name round them. So that's just a little touch on some of our medals. Now the last thing I suppose we ought to talk about before I get off is non-official commemorative medals. Now this has become a big thing over the years. There's lots of civilian companies out there that produce their own military style medals, but you purchase them. Now, as a civilian, as a veteran, you can purchase these medals online and you can wear them. You're not breaking any rules. There's no law against wearing them. So there's all sorts of commemorative medals. Every time there's a Jubilee, these commemorative companies will bring out their own version of that Jubilee or coronation medal, and you can purchase them. There's medals for all sorts you can buy, different campaigns, etc. So some veterans that have never received any official recognition for service sometimes purchase these commemorative medals from civilian companies and wear them. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's totally legal. Obviously, if you're a serving member of the armed forces, you certainly buy these commemorative medals from civilian companies, but you can't wear them while you're a serving member. And it's pretty bad form. Again, it's not against the law if you're a veteran, but I'd say it's pretty bad form to mix in medals that you've bought that you might be entitled to. You meet the criteria, but bought these privately produced commemorative medals, mixing them in amongst your own official awards that you received from your military service. Sometimes you'll see a veteran, he may wear his official medals and then underneath a couple or three commemorative ones, and that's fine, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people frown on it. It's not something I would do, but some people do it, and it's fair enough. Of course, there is the old Walter Mitties, as we know, that like to go on eBay or wherever. And, well, you don't have to go on eBay. You can go on any site and buy a Victoria Cross if you want and have your name engraved on the back. Why they let them do that, I don't know. But you can buy replica medals, get them engraved and wear them. And that's what Walter Mitties sometimes do, which is really bad show, as you know. Anyway, that's enough from me. Right, quick one. Couple of baseball caps left. Please have a look in the description of this video. There'll be some details in there of how you can purchase a £7 Let's Tab 59 baseball cap. Please have a look at that if you can, get them shifted. We can go on to our next merchandise project. If you're new to my channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider it. I'm not saying do it, I'm saying consider it. And enjoy this weather, stay safe, and remember, let's tap.